Hi, everyone. So my name is Kiki. I'm from Meal Garden Professional, and I'm here with Marissa. And this is the second round in our series of This Is How You Wellpreneur, which is a series that I run where I connect with some of our successful meal garden professionals and ask them for insights based on how they run their business. We can learn a little bit about the niche market that they work with, and then also how they use different tools and services, and one of them being Meal Garden Professional, to make that a success. So today I am here with Marissa. Marissa, thank you so much for joining us and being our guest.
Thanks.
Today. I'm going to give a little bit of an intro to Marissa so that everyone knows why she's amazing and why I asked her to be our guest for today. So Marissa is a mother, wife, and fitness and nutrition buff. She's been in the fitness and holistic nutrition industry for over 20 years. That's crazy because you don't look much older than 20, actually. And she currently resides in Colorado with her family and farm animals, and runs her business Core Time Fitness and Wellness on their property. And she specializes in training women with areas of posture correction, weight loss, and overall health and wellness. She's a certified personal trainer and also a certified posture specialist, which is something I didn't even know existed. And she has a certificate in holistic nutrition counseling with a focus on detox and bringing the body back to balance. So without further ado, would you mind sort of sharing your story and how you actually got into all of this field and this stuff?
Absolutely. So I got into it when I was 18, and I just fell in love with the whole weightlifting and learning about how we can nourish our bodies with food and exercise. But I didn't get into the business side until after I had my oldest son, who's almost 15, when I gained over 100 pounds, and I weighed about 210 after I had him, which is really heavy. I'm only 5'5". I'm not very tall. And so just learning how to bring that body back down after having a baby is not easy. You know, your hormones change and all that. And so that's where I kind of fell in love with teaching other women, the same thing, and how they can actually bring their bodies and be healthier than they were even pre-baby after having children. And it just kind of grew from there, and finding different areas that I loved, and I'm always learning. So that's kind of in a nutshell, what got me started was my own personal journey.
Amazing. And would you mind talking a little bit about how you do coach women now? Is it specifically just women?
It is. I only work with women. Yes.
Okay. And what does your business model sort of look like? What, onboarding a new client, like what, if for people watching that would be maybe interested in being a client, what would that sort of system look like?
Sure. I've kind of created a multi-model, I guess, a multi-level model, because there's so many factors that come in with wanting to get healthy, and we're all different. We're all very unique. And so I have options for in-person here in Colorado. I do online one-on-one coaching, and I'm also launching a brand new membership-based website starting in November, because I hear a lot of time, especially moms, new moms, or moms that have, kids in their 20s, we're all busy. Yeah. And two barriers I hear are time and money. And so I've tried to create something that would fit every budget and everybody's schedule, so there's no excuse not to have, a professional on hand and have the tools available to be able to get you into the optimal health that you want to get to.
Yeah, that's something we hear a lot at Meal Garden as well, specifically the money thing when it comes to ingredients and kind of finding those ingredients in a meal plan that you can get at, I'm not sure in the States if you guys have No Frills, but that's sort of our like kind of crappy low-end grocery store. And it's the idea of being able to still eat incredibly healthy, incredibly, nourished and get those superfoods, but that they're still pantry staples and they're still very accessible. So weaving that in.
Yes.
Now, you are an expert in IF, or intermittent fasting. So would you mind talking a little bit about, first of all, probably most professionals watching this know what IF is, but would you mind giving a little bit of a rundown on what IF is, the different variations, because I know there's like 16-8, kind of an overview of that, and then we can talk about how you actually implement it with clients.
You bet. So, I never like to say I'm an expert because we're all learning and things change, it's like, but you find a topic that you love and that you find something that works, that can work for everybody, even though we are all, I believe in bio-individuality, but that with intermittent fasting, you can tweak it so much that you can fit it in, with almost everybody. And so intermittent fasting, obviously, and then like you said, a lot of professionals probably have heard of it, have used it, know about it. But it's basically just having a fasting window and a feeding window. And you can go from, I've read some where people will fast 24 hours a couple times a week, and that's pretty extreme. Or you can do, 20 fasting hours and 4 eating hours. You can do 16-8, 18-6. Most of us are probably already fasting and don't even know it, because if we don't eat late at night and we're not, super early risers and eat breakfast at 9 or 10 in the morning, you're more than likely already doing intermittent fasting.
That's the best part about it. I remember I was telling when I first got into intermittent fasting, and people would be like, oh, fasting. And it's like, no, because those fasting hours count when you're asleep as well. So it's really not, it doesn't have to be that big of a deal. Now, I love how you mentioned bio-individuality, because that's something I'm, oh my goodness, so about. I recently, well, actually last year, got my my DNA tested for personalized nutrition, and I was actually recommended to eat within a certain time period. So fasting really does work for me in terms of regulating my circadian rhythms. So when it comes to your clients, how do you transition them into fasting, and how do you figure out what sort of fasting protocol is right for them?
That's a fantastic question. And so when I first get a client and they are starting with me, they get a lot of paperwork to fill out. It's not just a simple form. I look very deep into, what their health history is, what they're feeding. I'm used to saying feeding.
I know, same.
What their diet looks like currently and what they're used to eating and what their issues are, because I have a little bit of a background in functional medicine. So I like to see, what else is going on with the body. And then we take it from there. Lots of interviewing going on.
Okay, perfect.
And so with the intermittent fasting, we start with, we have to experiment. You mentioned DNA testing, and that's actually something I'll be offering next year with my clients as well. And I think that's phenomenal that you did it.
Yeah.
But also, without having that in the picture yet, what I do is we experiment. We start with a 24, we start a 20-hour fasting, 4-hour eating, and we take that for a week or two, see how they feel. It's all about learning to listen to your own body.
Yeah.
How do you feel? How is your sleep? You mentioned circadian rhythm. That's huge to understand that we're getting the right sleep cycles for our bodies. And then we take it from there. And if it's not working, then we tweak it. But it's very much, I'm very hands-on with my clients. So then that way, I'm not letting them suffer in silence. I want to hear that we're doing the right thing for their bodies.
Okay. So it sounds like, though, the overall starter protocol is to try them at least on that 24 thing. Now, do you let them choose the 4-hour eating period? Because, some people like it during the day or, towards the end at night. Do you provide recommendations on that, or do you kind of based on what they want to do?
It's kind of both, because when you do any kind of a lifestyle adjustment, it has to be something sustainable. Yeah. I can't tell you what to do, because I may not know when your family likes to eat or what activities you have going on. So it really has to be something that they're gonna like, that's gonna benefit their body, and something that they can learn to do long term. Because if they don't do it long term, then it might not be something that's gonna give them long term success. And so most people like to eat dinner with their families. That's what I've dealt with, mostly. And so then we switch it to, fasting overnight after dinner through the day and eating midday. Okay. Some people prefer to have large breakfasts with their families. And so then we alter that for them. And there have been a couple studies that have shown that fasting earlier on in the day is actually a little bit more effective as far as weight loss goes versus fasting later at night. But it really depends on the person's goals and just what their body is used to. So even though there's studies that show that, it doesn't mean that's going to work for everybody. Yeah. And so like we talked about, it's just basically what works for you. Let's experiment, for a week or two. If this isn't working for you, then let's come up with something that together we can figure out and put together something that works for you and your family.
Makes sense. And what about like the number of meals? Kind of how do you advise on that? And, if you're putting together a meal plan, because obviously I want to throw in Meal Garden here, but if you're putting together a meal plan, how is it that you kind of advise if there is only a smaller period of eating time? Is it like snacking, or are you one of those people that kind of like have your one big meal and that's it? Or I guess I feel like I know the answer. It's custom to the person, right?
It is. But there are some guidelines because as women, we tend to eat less protein than men. Yeah. And on all the studies that I have found, and this actually answers one of the questions that we had someone ask, how does it affect hormones? Is we don't eat enough protein. And if I restrict a woman to eating one meal a day, I would start to worry if she's getting enough nutrients in that one meal. Because that's a lot of food to pack in and eat once, in my opinion. Now, it might work for some, but in just what I've seen with my clients, that's not really favorable. Yeah. When women fast, typically we don't get enough protein, and we have a hormone called kisspeptin. And what happens is that starts to drop, which raises our estrogen levels, which can cause hormone imbalance. So what I like to advise is that the first meal that they eat when they're breaking their fast have protein and be heavy in vegetables. Okay. And so I like them to make sure they're getting their nutrients in, because a lot of times I've read a few articles with fasting, like, oh, you're fasting, eat whatever you want, Yeah. And you don't want that body to go into that that mode of starvation and then just binging on pizza and whatever you're craving at that moment. Yeah. And so giving that body the nutrients right away, making sure you've got your protein, your healthy fats, but a heavy vegetable load is going to help them to get those nutrients in right away. And then the next meal, typically on a 4-hour window, that's their first meal. Usually that keeps them full for about an hour or so. And then the next meal that we go into, we still have veggies, but it's not as heavy as veggies. It's still a protein. And if they want to throw in some berries or something, they can. I don't like to do too much dairy, but yogurt is a good one to throw in if they like to mix their berries with nuts and seeds. Okay. And then their heavy meal of the day is the last meal, which is rich in their proteins. And if they've done a workout, we throw in some carbohydrates in there as well, like sweet potatoes, the tuber root vegetables that are really carbohydrate rich. But we tend to stay on a grain-free kind of a regimen for the most part. Okay. Rice sometimes.
That was going to be my next question, because oftentimes intermittent fasting or fasting, automatically people assume, oh, you have to be eating keto, or like that's the right way to do it. What are your thoughts on, having fasting and intermittent fasting protocols and then the actual food itself? Does it always need to be a fairly keto-ish diet, or does that not necessarily need to align?
I think keto is kind of a buzzword right now. Yeah. Even though it's been around for a long time. And if it's done right, it can be done well. Mm-hmm. So it really depends. And I do educate. And I mean, there are people that are vegetarians. We have some paleo folks. We've got some keto folks. And so it's really customized to what their preference is for eating styles. But yeah, I don't push and say, well, it has to be this, unless like, hey, I want to do keto, or I want to, I like the paleo or primal. I mean, there's so many names for everything anymore, but I know. My thing is just making sure that they're getting whole, real foods, that are high in nutrients. That's just the biggest thing for me. And just making sure they're getting enough, because again, we don't want those hormone levels, to kind of freak out on us. And we don't want any kind of negative side effects, because the whole point is longevity. It's, fat loss, it's feeling amazing, it's sleeping better. We want all the good stuff and not the bad stuff to happen.
Exactly. And you mentioned towards the beginning something that made me realize, cautions around fasting and intermittent fasting. How can you monitor that? And for other professionals watching that are, their clients are asking to be put on an intermittent fasting protocol, or they want to try fasting, what are some cautionary tips that you can provide on the side of professionals to know when it might not be right? Because I know like for some people with adrenal fatigue or something like that, then they actually should be eating all the time, or, every couple hours, and that's healthy. So do you know anything around that?
I've looked at that a lot. And so obviously pregnancy is not recommended because again, when you do a fasting kind of window, you are restricting your calories.
Yeah.
So it's just automatically going to be a caloric restriction in that person's daily diet. And so we don't want to do that during pregnancy. I even caution against it for breastfeeding moms.
Okay.
But that can be tweaked a little bit. I definitely would not recommend a breastfeeding mom do a 20-hour fast and a 4-hour eating window.
Mm-hmm.
It can be beneficial if she's doing a shorter window, like a 16-hour fast and an 8-hour eating window, as long as she's getting some high nutrients, highly dense nutrients in that diet while she's eating. That would be okay as long as her milk production doesn't drop. That's kind of the warning signs that I would look for on a breastfeeding mom.
Okay.
I've also read like, type 1 diabetes, it's not recommended. I mean, unless you're working with a professional, you'd have to talk with your doctor if you're taking any kind of medications or anything like that. Adrenal fatigue, absolutely. That's something, especially if it's medicated, you want to talk with your doctor about that and see, because that's not something you want to stress the body out anymore with adrenal fatigue. And then another one is someone who has a history of eating disorders.
Okay.
Because you definitely don't want to create kind of an obsession with, it's not my 20 hours yet, or I'm at 19, but I'm hungry, I can't eat. You just don't want to go there. And so you have to create a healthy mindset first and kind of deal with the other issues first. And then you can slowly get them into a shorter fasting window.
Totally. I love that. And I love how you mentioned, it's really the idea of mindful fasting and still being listening to your intuitive hunger signals. And it's, as you said, if you're at, 16 or 17 hours and you really feel like you need to eat, then encouraging the client that that's okay. Because as you said, if not, you might actually turn to binging. And that's why I really also loved how you mentioned that the first meal that they break their fast needs to be so nutrient dense so that, to kind of almost, I'm thinking, counteract the possibility of them binging later on.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. And then the other thing that I wanted to ask, similar note, can fasting be done on a long-term basis, or should it be done for, like a 3-month protocol? What's your take on that?
Again, that would depend on the person's goals. Everything that I have read, it can absolutely be done on a long-term basis, but I would adjust it because, we always like to surprise our bodies. You always want to challenge your body, especially if your goal is to build muscle, if it's just for longevity, for health. If you're just looking to keep your body, long-term and keep the insulin levels down because of health reasons, 2 totally different goals, right there. I typically deal with women who are wanting to lose fat and gain muscle. And so we teach, just kind of giving it a cycle. And so we start with the 20-hour, 4-hour window. We do that for a short period of time. We monitor, fat loss, weight loss, how they're feeling, how that's going. And then we switch it up a little bit. I've even, after a certain phase that, they're in, I've even recommended, okay, don't fast on the weekends because again, it's lifestyle because, their husbands or their wives are home, families are home, kids are home from school, and, they might want to go out and have dinner or go have brunch and not have to be like, oh, I can't eat because I'm fasting. That's not fun. And that's not sustainable.
Exactly.
And so once they start to reach their goals, which we calculate at the very beginning, and they say, I've reached my goal, now what? Now what do I do? And say, okay, well, we've tried all the windows of fasting. What did you feel the best on? Do that 5 days a week. And then Saturday and Sunday, just eat good, healthy foods whenever you want, you know? And so then that way the body is always kind of in guessing mode, and it doesn't go into that and maintain that starvation mode.
Yeah.
And we have found that to work very well.
And I think that works. I don't have any expertise in fitness. I do little fitness things once in a while, but I think that's also really key when it comes to working out, kind of tricking your body and switching up your routines and stuff like that can have a lot more benefits in the long run, because, as you know, our bodies adapt. So I just want to note to our attendees, so we have about 10 minutes left in the webinar. I'll leave the last 5 minutes to questions. So if you guys want to ask questions, you can do that through the chat, and you can start asking questions at any time, and we'll save the last 5 minutes and we'll go through those. So for our attendees, just heads up on that. And then let's kind of shift away a little bit from fasting now and talk a little bit about your own success tips for coaching women back to optimal health after having a baby. So considerations and action plans. I know that a lot of our professionals do work with, moms and might be new moms. So are there any like general high level tips that you can kind of guide our professionals on that?
Working with new moms is so much fun. And, you know, especially when you go through it yourself, but it can feel very defeating. You know, and that's something to keep in mind when working with a new mom, especially if she was an active mom before. And just, you know, pregnancy affects all of us differently. You know, like I mentioned at the beginning, I was the mom who gained 100 pounds and just felt like death after I had my first child. Where some moms
You're not making it sound really great. I'm like, I'm never having
children. I know, sorry. But it's so different for everybody. You know, some bodies do really well with pregnancy and others don't. And so you just have to understand that that mom is probably going through a lot of psychological changes mentally with this new body that looks totally different. You know, you have this amazing little human being that you created. And so just being very patient, you know, with your new mom client. We do focus a lot on posture, because when you carry a heavy baby, I mean, I had big 9-pound babies, you know, it tends to, you know, take a toll on your posture, which can really weaken the core. And, you know, the core is kind of central to your whole body. And so we have to really make sure that we take it slow with them, even though their mind might be like, let's do deadlifts, let's do planks, let me do crunches. And you just kind of have to make sure that you get that program starting with the foundation of a strong core and a good posture, and slowly bring them up. And, you know, just keeping in mind, you know, and reminding them, hey, you created a life, you know, your body did something amazing, have some grace, and it's going to take time. And so that's probably, I mean, it seems pretty basic and we all know that, but I think we forget, because we, as trainers, we get excited, you know, when a new mom comes and they want to build muscle and you're like, yeah, let's do it. Do some burpees, do some, you know, you just have to really be patient and take it in steps.
Yeah. So, and I think that applies definitely for fitness and nutrition, right? Take it slow.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And now what about, again, shifting gears to detoxing, because this is something that you have some experience with working with clients, and it's another buzzword. I know it's not as new or maybe as trendy right now, but I think that it always will be, and always, you know, there's so much evidence and everyone's saying, you know, oh, we're so full of toxins and we need to detox and all this jazz. So what's your take on that, and how do you approach it when I'm sure you get a lot of clients that come and say, oh, I need to be put on a detox. I know a lot of my friends come to me for that, and it's like, oh God.
And yeah, I kind of make that face too, because detoxes can be so extreme and they can be so simple, you know, and really, you know, and that word I think is thrown around a lot. Yeah. When there's so many different levels, you know, there's detox on a cellular level. There's something as basic as detoxing your home of chemicals, you know, just getting out chemical cleaners, tossing the makeup and the perfumes that have, you know, carcinogens and formaldehyde and all that kind of stuff out. That will slowly, our bodies are pretty amazing. And if we feed them the right nutrients and we have our movement and that lymphatic system can keep going like it should, our bodies are going to detox for us. Yeah. So we just have to be sure that we're doing all of those steps first, and not just these extreme, you know, detoxes for short periods of time and then going right back to it, an unhealthy toxin-filled lifestyle. Yeah. And so, and a lot of people I think tend to stress about it, you know, and we really can't, because we can't control what's outside of our four walls of our house and what we put into our body and how we treat our bodies. So you kind of have to, again, that mindset thing, mindset is huge because we can't let it get so unhealthy that we're afraid to go in public for the fear of toxins in the grocery stores.
Yeah.
And so we teach a lot about that. I make sure to cover on that first and just know, hey, trust your body. Your body is perfectly designed and it will work for you, but let's focus on putting the right foods in, keeping the toxins out of the house, and keeping that lymphatic system moving. On another scale, for clients that come to me and maybe they may found out through their doctor, through a blood test, that maybe they have like parasites or, that can happen. We have microorganisms living in our body and some of them we don't want there. Yeah. And so there's lots of foods like pumpkin seeds and cilantro are very, very good at helping to detox the body of parasites that are unwanted. And so we can take that a step further. And that's why I love using Meal Garden, especially for my clients, because I can say, okay, well, this is going to be a parasite detox without making you feel sick or going into some really bad detox symptoms. And they can see it simply with recipes and, the ingredients. And then it feels more like a lifestyle and not like a punishment.
Amazing. And and that just brings me to an idea for myself that I have, when it comes to sort of building programs. A lot of our professionals come to us and they're like, oh, I want to do a detox program, whatever. And you're mentioning really great points, which is it's a lot about the mindset. So for professionals watching that want to build out a program, yes, you can build out a program on Meal Garden. You can have that meal plan that includes things like pumpkin seeds and cilantro. I just read Medical Medium, who I absolutely love. And so including things like dulse, wild blueberry, having all of that in the actual meal plan itself, but then mentioning the other things in reading materials, mentioning, about the mindset protocol, and about the lymphatic drainage, kind of giving some tips on that, or even creating a video that talks about, maybe dry brushing or something like that to really bring in a holistic approach to all of that. Now, do you want to talk a little bit more about, you mentioned that you're launching something, a membership program. Would you mind providing a little bit more details? Because we have a lot of new professionals that come in that they're just like, oh, I just did my nutrition degree and I just want to help people, but like, I'm so confused. I'm so lost. I don't know where to go. And you seem to have it down packed with like all your different businesses and, your different multi-level offerings. So what kind of, do you mind sharing a little bit about your program coming up to give professionals kind of an example?
Absolutely. So I have found, like we talked about at the beginning, time and money are those two biggest barriers. And also because there are so many people that need our help. We can reach more people and have an efficient time schedule for ourselves by offering things online. And that's the great thing about technology today, is that we can do that, without having to have fancy equipment or, expensive equipment in fancy studios and whatnot. And so what I'm doing, it's a membership base. And so it'll have 3 different tiers that'll range from a lower amount and a lower offering to kind of like the whole shebang kind of a thing, at the end. But what I'm going to do is 3 live video workouts a week for my clients. So they can work out just like we're doing today on Zoom. They can work out with me on Zoom. And I just got certified. It's going to be fun. I just got certified to be a Tabata instructor.
Oh, so that's like HIIT, right? That's like the 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. Love that.
Yep. So the workouts will be under 30 minutes, including instruction. Okay. And they're tough. Let me tell you, we talked about challenging the body. Being a weightlifter for 20 years, I'm struggling doing these workouts. So it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of just be real with, with my clients. Like, hey, this is hard for me too, but we want results and we don't have time. We got toddlers and we have goats, and I mean, we've got so much going on here. And so they'll be able to join us. And I have the website will have like a part where I can archive all the videos. Okay. So for instance, if they want to do more, they can go back and pick out their favorite and do it at home. Okay. I have incorporated my Meal Garden into the nutrition section. So I'm building meal plans, and I love that we can actually just share recipes on there. And so I'll have to show you, it looks beautiful with all the colored pictures and everything. Yay. And so I have it to like, there's some, lunch meals, there's dinners, there's soups. And so they can go in there and pick out and make their own meal plan. We'll touch base on thyroid health, because that's a huge, huge thing for women, thyroid health. And it's just going to have a whole bunch of fun topics, but
amazing
community, it's having that community that, I'm excited to have these women, and they can reach me at any time that they have questions, or they can reach out to each other and share their successes. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Amazing. So if I can just reiterate back, so it looks like, as you said, community is going to be a big staple of that. Incorporating videos, and in your case, live fitness videos, is awesome. And then it sounds like you're using Meal Garden actually as more of a recipe database that you've kind of curated, and meal plans, and really empowering your clients to take those examples, but then also actually just take the recipes and create meal plans themselves. That way, again, it is more sustainable. And that's something that I often suggest that professionals do. So yes, definitely send me the link. And I'll also, once it's ready and all that jazz, I'm happy to share it across our socials as well. Marissa, there's still like a billion things I want to ask you, but we are out of time. I think that I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure that our attendees did as well. How can other professionals get in contact with you, or other clients, possibly future clients?
Well, they can reach me. Facebook is always a good place today to connect. And so my business name is Core Time, and it's spelled like the herb, THYME, Fitness and Wellness. Or my website is www.coretimefitness.com. And that will be, you'll see my old website right now, but that will be the same URL that will convert to the new website when that launches. So they'll be able to kind of check it out. And hey, if there's professionals on here that love IDEA, I am totally cool if they want to reach out, because they want to do the same thing, because there's so many people out there. We can't all do it ourselves. And so it's great to have a community where we can share ideas with each other, because the whole goal is to help people. So I'm happy to reach out, and have them reach out and ask questions, because I think it's going to be a fun idea, and I'll take suggestions too from others.
Oh, thank you. That's so great. Yeah, and you're right. It's all about just enlarging the pie, right? So yeah, well, thank you so much. And I look forward to checking out your program and staying in touch, of course. Thank you so much.
So nice to be here.
Bye.
Bye.